My name is Rosalind Khan. I'm your featured speaker here today. I welcome you all and thank a few people who helped me out greatly. This event is being sponsored by the Friends of the Library. The gentleman right there, his name is Vincent Retz. He was one of my former students who took my class. And he said to me as we came to the library the other day, "Teacher, you changed my life." He said, "By what you taught me in your class, I was able to take those skills and to help myself pursue the field of business and be successful in what I'm going ahead and doing." And so I want to thank him for going ahead and coming out. This is also one of my former students who was in my class. Because when I get up and teach, I change people's lives. And I hope that when you're here with me today, that I might make some impact in your life. That when you're up in front of an audience, you're going to change people's lives as well. Life is full of many opportunities. The average person in a career does 5 to 7 things. And if you want to talk to me after this, I'll tell you all the different things that I've done. It's so important on how you communicate to your patients and making sure they understand what your directions are on follow through. And in medicine today, it's really competitive and difficult and burnout and all those other things. Well, recently I was tutoring some young kids who were about the size of yours. They were over in La Cañada. And I was so excited to teach these 8 years old how to stand up and give a speech, and they were professionals. So maybe there's something you can take back to your kids. Yeah, a lot of people go in and it's the ums and the ers and the ands. And I want you all to think of this message here, for everyone here. Imagine if when you got up and you spoke to people, you could change their life by the message you had to say. And if you want to be a nurse, and you're in that profession because you want to help people, then think about the reason that you got into nursing and what it is that you want to do. So when you're in that interview, you can convey that message. Does that make sense? I am the worst with cars. Just take my car into the shop. Can you please help me? I need it fixed. I need to get on the road and I need to get it now. And it's really important, as they say, is to speak so people understand you. You know everything about a car, but they don't know everything about a car. So you got to break it down really simple and help out. There's a lot of information that I'm going to be covering, and some people like to go ahead and take some notes and things like that. So let's go ahead and officially get started. So the sliders in the back are just future events that I'm going ahead and speaking about. So I want you to imagine that you're listening to a speech, and it's absolutely absolutely boring that your head is tilting off to the side and you're about to go to sleep. And suddenly, you're awakened by the clock, and the speaker's done. Have you guys ever experienced that before? How many don't want that to happen to you? Ladies and gentlemen, you are in the right place, because I don't want to have anybody in this group fall asleep when I'm going ahead and speak. So I'm going to go ahead and teach you some strategies. And when I'm teaching these strategies, you might wonder, well, who is this crazy lady up in front of me? Well, I've been doing this for about 25 years. I spent about 10 years in the organization called Toastmasters that teaches you some things. And I was always winning. And I said, maybe I have a gift that I can give to other people. And so I've been an instructor for the last 15 years throughout the city of Los Angeles and various community colleges. And recently, I was a TEDx speaker in January. And I got on that stage because I wanted to change people's lives with my messages. That talk was on arts and education. And I've been doing this for the last 4 months, and it is really exciting. And so I have a lot of experience when it comes to public speaking, and today I promise you, you will learn at least 2 things that you can take home and use. 2 things that you can take home and use. So as we're talking about public speaking, we want to go ahead and address 5 areas. They're there on the paper that you have in front of you. One is handling that fear. We have an outside fear, and then we have an inside fear. And so we need to learn how to control those. The next thing we have is you've got to turn on the passion. There's something in each one of your hearts that you love to speak about. And today we're going to talk about how you can find those topics that really mean something to you, that when you stand up you can bring it alive. One of the keys is going ahead and talking about stories. Everyone loves to hear a good story. And then I'm going to show you how it is that we go ahead and pull it all together. Okay? So that's our plan. Let's go ahead and let's take off on the beginning place. We go ahead and start. We talk about fear. Everyone has fear. Did you know that the #1 fear that people have over public speaking is greater than the fear of dying itself? It's pretty sad. Pretty sad. They'd rather die than go ahead and stand up and give a speech in public. I don't want anybody in my audience here to die. That would be absolutely tragic. That'd be absolutely awful. So one of the keys that we need to go ahead and consider is our breathing. Now, if you could all go ahead and join me in standing up, we're going to do a couple of exercises here. If you could all go ahead and stand up. I promise it won't be the whole speech. And what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and slouch your shoulders over. Go ahead and slouch down. And as you slouch down, I want you to join me in this phrase, and I'll stand up so you can hear me. The phrase that we're going to say is, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Slouch over, everyone, slouch over. Oh, all together. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, now go ahead and raise those shoulders back. Now go ahead and say, good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
What did you notice that happened with your voice?
Stronger.
It's stronger. Okay, so go ahead and have a seat. So there's a thing that your mother taught you when you were young, and she said to you, my mother always did, Rosalind, stand up straight, get those shoulders back. And as you notice, as I stand up straight, the voice becomes even stronger. Even stronger. So you want to make sure that you stand up straight. The next thing we have is our breathing mechanism. The breathing mechanism. Go ahead and put your hand right here on your sternum, which is above that little chest bone there. And go ahead and take a deep breath and inhale and go. And exhale. Did you feel some movement there? You guys feel some movement there? Let's go ahead and do it again. And exhale. Now, the key to an effective speaker is speaking from here. Have you ever been to a concert that's been canceled because the person had problems with their voice? Raise your hand if you've ever had that happen to you. We've all been to concerts that have been canceled. The problem is they speak from up here. And you notice when I speak from up here, there's no movement. So you need to stand up straight and tall. And you have the voice come from here. Does that make sense? Okay, so we've got our body apparatus is all correct. We've got the posture, we've got the breathing. Now, there's another thing. A lot of speakers have this nervous little jitters. They just can't control themselves. And I want to make sure that when you stand up, that you don't have these little jitters that are bothering you. So go ahead and stand up. Go ahead and stand up again. We've got some movement here. And one of the things I do with my class, and they absolutely love this exercise, it's an exercise that helps us, and if you can't bend, just do the best that you can. Go ahead and put your feet apart this far. And I learned this at a women's conference, and they said, cross your hands in front of you. Cross your hands in front of you. We're going to inhale and we're going to bend down as far as you can go. You don't need to touch the floor, but just inhale. And then, let me show you. We inhale as I go down, and then you go ahead and up, you exhale, and you bring the hands together, and you go, ah. Everybody with me? Okay, so we go inhale, down, and exhale. Again, let's go ahead and inhale, down, and exhale. Okay, let's see those big smiles. We go, ah. Gotta do those ahs. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Inhale. By a show of hands, how many feel just a little bit better than when you walked in today? Okay, so one of the things that we learn is how to go ahead, have a seat, is how to calm those nerves. And this is the only thing that you take away from me. It's a valuable lesson because life, there's a lot of stress out there in the world. Lots and lots and lots of stress. So we want to make sure that we get that breathing pattern exactly down correct. Now, the next thing is we've got to go a little bit more internally. We have this voice recorder in our head. And I know that you've heard it before. And the little voice goes ahead and says, no, I can't. I'll never be able to do that. It's absolutely impossible. Have you ever heard this voice before inside your head? We all have. And what I want to do is I want to tell you how to turn that off. And what we do is we change the message on the recorder. And the way that we change the message on the recorder is we take those negative images that people have of public speaking and we replace it with a positive message. And so one of the things, when I think of public speaking, I think about getting up in the morning and going out for this morning run. And as I go out, this brisk air, and as I'm running, what I enjoy the most is seeing the beautiful sun that's coming and it's filling up the whole sky. It's absolutely orange and it's yellow. And Mother Nature puts a huge smile on my face. And so what I do is I combine that negativity of public speaking, thinking about that positive feeling that I get by running. And people call this the runner's high. Anybody know any runners? Have you ever seen a runner out there who's got a scoundrel on their face who's going just as they're running? Oh wow, well, you should have brought him here so we can go ahead and change that. So one of the things we're talking about is the attitude that you have. And one of my students gave this incredible speech the other day, and I want to share it with you. And he said, by the information that you put in your mind, you can change the mechanics of what goes on in your brain and how you process ideas. And he went ahead and he showed us these incredible pictures of these diagrams of people when they were thinking about positive, peaceful things. And you could almost see a snowflake there. Because what they were talking was positive, it had a good meaning. And then he told us about this beautiful place, Niagara Falls. And they took measurements of the water. And with the water and what's going on in the environment, they could measure the feelings that came off of that. And they said there was a great bit of negativity that was in that air. And you want to know why? Someone had committed suicide there. And yet a short while later, they brought a group of people in to go ahead and have a memorial service and to give tribute to this life that was gone and it was lost. And when they took a recalculation of the water and the feelings it gave off, it was peace, it was calm, and it was happiness. If we change the message that's in our mind, we can take out those negative things and we can go ahead and put positive things in. How many of you, if I say, I can, would that make a difference in your life? Go ahead, let me hear you.
I can.
Okay, so we've talked about the fear, we've talked about the outer fear, we've talked about the inner fear. Now, I want to take you to finding the passion. We talk about passion, there's something in each one of your hearts. It's a topic that when you think about that topic, you can talk for hours. It's like you can't even stop that mouth from going because you feel so strongly about it. I want to tell you about how I found the thing that I'm really passionate about. This past January, I did some reading over the break, and I read this book, and I want you to write it down. It changed my life. It's called Zappos. It's the pursuit of passion, profits, and purpose. And in this book called Zappos, he goes ahead and he introduces this idea of random acts of kindness. One day, he'd gone to a local grocery store and he paid for the person behind him. When he came back the very next time he went shopping, the cashier said, I want to talk to you. Why did you do that? And he said, because I just wanted to make someone's days brighter. If you could do that for someone else, imagine what the consequences would be. And so I decided to take this random act and begin doing it with the students in my classroom. Just like many of you said when we began here today, you were scared, you were fearful of getting up and giving a speech. And what happened when my students began doing these random acts of kindness, 3 things changed. When they stood up and gave that speech, they said it with confidence. They said it with self-assurance. When students in my class give a speech, oftentimes the audience isn't always as receptive as they could be. But when they were talking about these random acts of kindness, all eyes were peeling on every single word that they said. If you were to take a measurement of the feeling in the class, there was this calm, there was this peace, and there was this serenity that I'd never seen before. And when I started reading these stories, they changed my life. I want to tell you about just 3 of them. I want to tell you how it created the passion in my life for what I'm doing today and what's going on in my world. One of the students I'd like to go ahead and share with you comes from Roybal High School. It's in the inner city of downtown Los Angeles. They don't have a lot of money. When you think of where this high school is located at First and Temple, you'd probably think of the gangs. You'd probably think of the graffiti. You'd probably think of the robbery. You probably think of the homeless people. Well, let me tell you about my student Angel. Angel's parents work in a high-rise building downtown. And one day, he was there, and as he was getting on the elevator, he noticed this lady who was running to go ahead and catch it, and he decides to hold it. And when he holds the elevator for her, the lady said, "Did you know no one has ever held the elevator for me? That's the first time it's ever gone hand-in-hand." He said, "It's my pleasure. I'm glad." And as he stood up in front of the class, this kid that many of you would look at as a gangbanger said to his peers, "Guys, we should all show greater respect for the older people who live in our society. One day, we're going to become old ourselves. We're going to become old ourselves." The next student I'd like to share with you is a student named Nazgul. She's a student who's learning English as a second language at LA City College. And she used to be a home healthcare worker for the nurses in the audience. And she's pregnant, and so she had a little difficulty getting around. And she had this lady whose diet subsisted of two things: what you pull out of the freezer and what candy you open and put in a pan. And not what the American Heart Association would obviously recommend. And so she said that she wanted to see if it would be okay if she brought some homemade soups to her. She wanted to bring a tomato and a bean soup. Now, when she went to her house, she ended up spending a day with them. These people were the lady was so moved by what she said. "You know, people call me all the time, and they ask me, 'What can we do for you?' She doesn't know how to ask people for help. And so she says to my student Nazgul, 'Your simply being here was like a dream come true for me.'" They spent the day together. And when Nazgul left her house, she stood and told the class there were tears that were coming down her face as she looked up and shared how difficult it is for the disabled in our society. Why can't we care about these people who can't do things for themselves? I was moved beyond words. And then there's a story of a student from West Los Angeles. A student from West Los Angeles, his mother, is raising money for the homeless. And she's asking people in her church just for $10. Now, Maria had spent time working with these kids. She knew what their lives were like. She knew about the houses they went ahead and lived in. And she decided that she was going to take the money that she had from her whole month's pay of $500, and she was going to donate it to this cause. She was going to donate it to this cause. It's amazing. Just a simple act of random kindness that I inspired my students across the socioeconomic levels from the inner city of downtown Los Angeles to the middle of Hollywood to the beaches of Santa Monica. I am creating a huge change. On the handout you picked out, I want you to go to my blog, because on that blog, you will see stories from these 3 different schools where these students are making these changes. You will see 3 publications that came out in the last week that talk about these good things that I'm doing in the community. I have 100 pages that I've already put down in a book that I'm writing that's called Stories from My College Teachings. Passion. We have to find the things that we really care about so that when you stand up and you give that speech that you're going to give, you're going to be able to change the audience's life because it means something to you. It means something to you. Now, when we go ahead and we talk about the facts, and we're talking about facts, we're talking about stories, how do we actually put the body of the speech together? Well, there's a problem with facts. It's called information overload. A lot of speakers have too much things that they want to go ahead and say. And so what you want to note is, I took a psychology class at UC Santa Barbara. And in the psychology class, it was talking about, so the average person can remember 3 to 5 things. Let me review for you. I said I took a class. It was at UC Santa Barbara. It was a psychology class, and I learned 3 to 5 things. Okay? I told you 3 stories of my students, and I can remember this because there's only 3 of them. There's Angel, who cared about the senior citizens. There is Nazgul, about the disabled. And there's Maria, who cared about the homeless people. And so what we need to do is we need to pick out the facts that you're going to go ahead and use. And when you pick out the facts, you got to be careful. There's a book that was written by Nancy Duarte. It's a book called Resonate. You can get it through the Interlibrary loan. And in this book, she talks about a wealth of information. And one of the things she says is, when she was working with Al Gore, he had a 1970s-style speech. He had the slide projector, and he'd tell the stories, he'd tell about your family vacation when they go, and they fall asleep. And it wasn't quite effective. And so what she did is she said, I want you to show these slides and tell a story. And so this is what Al did. Look at this slide right here. This is the world as we know it here today. But if we don't make some major changes in our lives, our grandkids will never be able to appreciate this picture that we're looking at right here, right now. And so this boring politician was transformed into an Academy Award winner. And if we went around the room right now, I bet someone is recycling water, someone is taking shorter showers, someone is thinking about the recycled newspapers, and it goes on. So you take a message and you create a story that people are going to be able to connect to. Another story that you're all familiar with, I'm going to use to illustrate the through line. This is the life of a recently departed person, Steve Jobs. We all know Steve Jobs. And another thing that I would ask you to go home and look at is I want you to get the biography that was written about him, the story of his life. It's a nice thick book. It will change your life when you go ahead and read it. And it talks about the hardships that he faced. You know, he was a world-class person in the world of computers. He had a love of animation and went into Pixar. He revolutionized the world that we have in the phones. But there's one speech I'm going to refer to throughout, and I want you to go home and download this. This is a speech that's called the Stanford Commencement Address. And in that talk, he talks about 3 points. We all know the magic number 3. The points he talked about were, it's on your paper, connect the dots, find the passion, and do it with love. Do it with love. And so as Nancy Duarte says in her story, that you have to go ahead and introduce a character. You have to introduce a character that the audience is going to fall in love with. And so at the beginning of his speech, he talks about the difficulties he had of being an adopted child and what it was like being raised with a second set of parents. And your heart comes out and you go, yeah, that's awful. Now this character goes ahead and he faces an obstacle. Well, one of the obstacles he had was he wasn't actually the nicest guy. Many people would have called him a jerk. And yet, he had this passion. He had this passion for computers, and he had this passion for technology. And he knew the ways in which he could inspire others to carry out his vision, okay? He knew how to inspire others, how to carry out the vision. So he took his interest as a youngster. He was always interested in computers. And so he went and he maximized what he could do in the computer world. And when he went to college, he ran into another obstacle. It was obstacle number 2. He decided when he took the classes for his major, they were boring. He didn't like them. He didn't care that his parents had spent every nickel, dime, and penny that they earned making sure that they followed the rules of what it was when they adopted that child. He was going to go to the best of schools. He dropped out of those classes. He started taking classes that made him happy. He took a class in calligraphy. He took a class in design. And when you look at the Apple graphics and the things that they have, it's reflected in those classes he took. There was a newspaper that he really liked at that particular time. I'll call it similar to the LA Weekly because it's an independent paper, but it had phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal design and layout. And it had independent thoughts. And a lot of these are combined and put together in many of the products that Apple had. So this is what we're talking about, connecting the dots. Finding the passion Now, there's not a person in this room that has a straight line towards success. All of our lives have twists and turns. And when you're telling a story, you want to write this down in your notes. There needs to be 3 problems the person faces. You've got to have 3. And so the next problem that he had was finding that passion. He loved computers ever since he was yay big. He loves computers so much that he began this Apple company. But his personality got the best of him, and they gave him a boot, kicked him out the door. Instead of putting his hands between his legs and just going home and crying, he didn't do that. Steve Jobs picked himself up, and he decided, I was also interested in the world of animation. And he went over to Pixar, and he revolutionized the way that whole industry worked. And when it hit its high, he didn't cry. He wasn't tearful as he went to revolutionize the way we use our phones. What are we on our 6th generation of the iPhone, this particular point? He found his passion. His passion was turning on those things that really excited him, that he would go from one company to the next, to the next, to the next. The story that you read on his life will truly change the way you see the world. And the next story is the love. And when you go ahead and you talk about the love, I recently talked to my advisor, the Small Business Development Committee, and he said that one of the keys that you need to find in business is that you need to find how it is that you can take the key and turn and inspire other people to follow through on what your wishes and desires are. And so remember I told you we had this difficult guy who pissed people off, who made them mad? He found a way to get them united with him on this dream that he had of going ahead and creating these changes in technology that revolutionized the whole way that things go ahead and work. Amazing, isn't it? Amazing. We talked about connecting the dots. We talked about finding the passion. We talked about finding the love. So when we're putting our stories together, we basically have the body of our speech. We basically have the body of our speech. And one of the things that Nancy Duarte says in her book that I need to go ahead and help you out on is this line that when we look at famous speeches, and this is on your outline, I promise it's there, that when you look at the famous speeches of Martin Luther King, when you look at the famous speech of Ronald Reagan, where there was this huge tragedy of the Challenger that had crashed and all those lives that were lost, when you look at Al Gore's speech, and when you look at Steve Jobs' speech, they all follow this formula. And let me go ahead and repeat this formula that I said, because it's a really important formula. It's in your notes. You want to introduce a character the audience is going to like. They have one problem. They have to resolve that problem and go on to a second problem, and a third problem. And they have to go on to resolve that third problem. And the most important thing is how do they end it? At the end of the speech, they come with all their medals, they come with all their accomplishments, and they have to drive the audience to go out and do something. There's something that you need to do, something that needs to make it happen in their lives. And so Steve Jobs says, in the commencement address that I talked to you about, he's finishing up his speech, and he says to the audience, you've heard about my life, you've heard about the troubles I have. I'm asking each and every one of you to go out there and face the world, to follow those challenges that are really important to you. When you hit those roadblocks, don't give up, don't quit, don't sucker down, don't give up. You've got to keep going on, because the future, it's about each and every one of you that's in this audience right now. When I listened to Steve Jobs' speech on that commencement address, it brought tears to my eyes, as if I was actually in the audience that he was speaking to. He was speaking to. Amazing power of words. So we've got the body of our speech. You ready with me here? And you're saying, but how do I begin my speech and how do I end my speech? I'm not sure how to put it all together. This is the easy business. This is the easy business. It's connecting the different parts. So one of the things that you do to go ahead and to create the intro and the conclusion, we always do that after the body is developed, is we go ahead and we create the hook. I want you to imagine that we're going on a fishing trip. I'm going to take that line and I'm going to throw it out in the water. And at the end of the water, it's going to be this nice big fish we're all going to have for dinner. We'll have a good time. That's what you need to do to begin the speech. You need to find a way to connect to the audience. And I'll remind you what I did today, and it's on your notes. When you begin a speech, you need to connect with the audience. That was the line I said to you. Do you know that people's number one fear, they'd rather die than stand up and public speak? Or it could have been the line of those people who were yawning and got awake when it was time to go ahead and give a speech. Okay? That is called the hook. Now, once you've got the audience involved, you need to tell them where we're going. What is the speech about? And I call that the purpose. And so we talk about the purpose. This is my specific goal. It was the line I told you at the beginning of the speech today. I want to teach everyone in this class how to give a more powerful speech. You guys remember this? Okay, so you need to tell them specifically where we're going, how it is that we give a more powerful speech. And the next thing are the 5 facts that we went ahead and covered. We covered the internal fear. We covered the external fear. We talked about turning on the passion. We talked about creating the stories. And we talked about unifying and bringing them all together. You guys all with me? Okay, so you've got to let them go, know where we're going. So we're launching off. Everybody got the intro? So here's how we end the speech. The way that we end the speech is we do the reverse of what we've done. And let me tell you why. You hear a speech how many times? Once. And if you only hear something once, we have trouble remembering it. And you want to make sure people remember the message that you're going to go ahead and say. And so when you begin the conclusion, you restate the thesis. Okay, that was outer fear, inner fear, passion and stories unify the whole. Then what I do is I restate the specific goal. Today, I wanted to share with all of you how it is that you can give a more powerful speech and make it work for you. And then I return to the very same way that I opened. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to go ahead and wake up from your slumber. Will you please go ahead and give me a round of applause? Let me hear it. I'm awake now. So what we've just seen is how to put a powerful speech together. How many feel a lot better than even when you started here? How many feel a lot better? Okay, now we're going to have some fun together. And I'm going to do an activity with you where we're going to make each and every one of you storytellers on your own. We're going to make each and every one of you storytellers on your own. I have 3 options. I have 3 options for you. And I have a paper that I'm going to hand out to you. It's on the paper that's there. One of the stories is I want you to tell me about your favorite. I'll give you the stories and you can decide which one you're going to do. Favorite family vacation. The next one is your best friend. And the last one is some situation that happened at work. Some situation that happened at work. Well, when you go ahead and talk about a story, you want to show that there's something you went ahead and overcame. When I go ahead and I talk about stories, let me tell you about the trip that I went to Spain. Oh my Lord. We went to Spain and they drive stick shift. And so we get to the place where we're at the desk and they said, who's going to drive? And everybody goes, I will, I will. Well, I last drove this car like 20 years ago. And we get in the parking lot in Spain. The reverse doesn't work the same way as it does in the United States. And so the car's going forward, not backwards. Yes, the car's going forwards, not backwards. I don't want to hit the car. And so I go, excuse me, yo hablo español, usted puede ayudarme. Can you help me please? I need to get this car. And they don't want to get in the car. They don't want to get in the car because they don't want to, damage it. And so he pushes me out of the spot. And I stop to thank him and the car stalls. And I said, okay, we're 2 weeks, 3 weeks in Spain, and we will not do any reverse. And you know when I learned how to do reverse? Oh my God. We had just had the day out, and we came back. And when we came back, we went down the wrong way street. We're on a hill. I don't know how to get the car back out. And so what goes ahead and happens is, excuse me, guy, can you come and help me? He says, you push it down, and you do it that way. Like, oh my God, I learned how to put the car in reverse. That never happened to you? I mean, you go on a vacation in the hotel, the room is just as you want it, the restaurant is just as you want it, the tour guides are just as you want it. I mean, I need to go on your vacations. I need to learn how to live.
Okay, we see. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so you guys.
Helpful.
Okay, great. Everyone get a chance to share their stories?
Yes.
Cool. Well, I have two things I want to say. The first one is, you guys are expert storytellers. You guys learned a lot. I just wanted to express that how happy I am from the bottom of my heart. When I talked to the librarian yesterday, she said, I wish I could have done a better job promoting this event. I don't really know if it's going to go ahead and show up. And I told my students at 3 different schools to go ahead and come out. And the only people who are here are my previous students. And there's nothing like giving a speech to an empty room. So I want to thank each and every one of you for agreeing to spend your Saturday coming out and listening to me. It was truly an honor. And I hope that I met my obligation, which was that you'd walk out of here and learn 2 things. You learned 2 things that I did. 2 things? Everyone learned 2 things? Okay. No other groups or other places that I can go out and speak. I'd love to be a speaker there. Thank you so much for coming out. I look forward to seeing you guys around some other places some other time. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.